What's up, everybody? It's Jeff. I am back, and as promised, we will actually be doing how to build your aim training routine, which is going to be a lot. We're going to be covering a lot. This may get broken up into many different parts, many different release videos. Before we do, be sure to like and subscribe, turn on notifications. You can catch our map guides, brought to you by Radiant players. You can catch our agent guides, same story. And then this guy teaching you how to point and click. Better than them, apparently. Anyways, see you on the other side. Alright, part one. Last time we were here, we talked about how a warm-up and aim training are not the same thing, but that kind of brings into the question, what is a warm-up? And a warm-up is something that you do to prepare yourself for a harder, more challenging environment. And usually this is your competitive games, or match days, or scrims, or whatever they may be, so that you're playing at what you know to be your baseline. But if you're doing it right, you're also warming up for aim training. So how do you warm up for the thing that you probably are doing as your warm-up? If you saw my video last week, I go on a little rant about this, but what's important to notice that a warm-up and aim training are not the same. So when we're warming up, what are we trying to do? Well, so in athletics, a warm-up is done to prepare yourself, open your muscles up, get your technical skills ready, and get your mind starting to think about the game and how you're going to play the game, right? And in esports, a warm-up is to open your muscles up and get your technique ready and prepare your mind for how you're about to play the game. It's really not much different, not much more complicated, but when you're warming up, the way that you do it is different from the way that you train, right? Now, when I'm thinking about warm-ups, since we're going in a deep dive here about warm-ups, so there are three things that I think about when I'm thinking about a warm-up, the three things that I'm trying to achieve, right? Number one is aim. You want to shoot them when you're playing the game, right? And if you're playing a game like StarCraft, or you're playing a game like Dota, you're going to have some other similar mouse control related thing that you need to be warm. But just your raw mechanics. Worst thing to come into a game is have all the right ideas and then just hit none of the right shots. That feels really, really painful. So number two is the brain, right? You do have to have good ideas. Now you can make up for being stupid if your aim is really good, so that's why we're doing aim training first and not advanced game theory. But when you're warming up for your game, you want your brain to get activated. And number three, and this is the one that's most neglected in esports, is your mouth, right? Especially in a team game. Now, if you're playing StarCraft and you're warming up, you probably don't need to warm up your communication skills because it's a 1-versus-1 game. But if you're playing Valorant, then you're going to want to warm up your communication, because if you practice and warm up in complete silence and then you go and play the game, it's going to be harder for you to talk and think and shoot all at the same time. These are skills. And so if you get used to subconsciously talking as you're doing other things, it doesn't even have to be useful. Just pour words out of your mouth while you're doing stuff, and the rest of the time you'll find in your matches that communication is much easier. And this is an easy one. Like, this is a free tip. You slot this into your warm-ups and your communication skills are going to take off everywhere. Because you'll just talk, because when thoughts pop into your head, they will get expressed. You won't worry about it as much. How do you warm up the brain, right? So that covers how to warm up the mouth. The brain, a deathmatch is a good one. In Valorant, deathmatch is all right if you apply yourself mentally to doing it. I've seen people play deathmatch very critically, very thoughtfully. I've seen people buy stingers and run it down because they don't know why they're there. If you're going to waste your time like that, then don't do it. One other way that I've seen that works really well is players will go, they'll have a ritual, they'll have a routine before they do anything, whether it's training or playing or whatever, and part of that includes eating. And they'll sit down with their food, whether it's a bowl of cereal or a sandwich or whatever, and they will watch some replay footage, whether it's pro replay footage or their replay footage, picturing an idea, working their brain, getting that activated so that way they're ready mentally to play the match later on. It just gets their head in that right space. But we're here to talk about aim. Now, aim is something that is a little different, right? Because when you're talking about warming up aim in the sense of, okay, well, I want my aim to be better, I'm going to train my aim, but I need to warm my aim up to train my aim. Well, how do you do that? What do you do, right? Let's take a look at this. So when you're playing soccer, this is my background, so this is what we're going to use. We got FC Barcelona here. So when it comes down to athletics, when you're warming up, you don't want to overstrain yourself, right? You're cold, you're rusty, you're going to be a little sloppy, you could hurt other players, you could hurt yourself. That's the last thing you want to do 15, 20, 30 minutes before a game or even before hard training, right? You want to get opened up, you want to get ready for this extra strain. So watch the way that these guys approach this scenario, right? It's very relaxed, it's very casual. There's just enough pressure to force them to be active, but it's a little sloppy. Admittedly, right? They're not here overdoing it. They're not pushing themselves too hard because then they can get hurt. But it's all about getting loose, being ready to play. And you'll actually see that in some instances of this where just by virtue of being nearby, the defender has created a scenario where the players with the ball will miss the pass and give it up, right? But the process here is very simple. It's not super active. This is a technique focused drill. It's all about doing things cleanly, and for the guys in the middle, they're not even running that hard. They're just trying to put up enough pressure to generate a threat, and what that'll do is it'll force opportunities for players to be interchanged in this, right? It's a really good team warm-up. It's one of the best, and yeah, as you can see, it's very technique focused. It's not high intensity, right? But when they want to do something high intensity, what they're going to do is they are going to actually just run. They're just going to run. They'll have some cones out and they'll run and they'll go back and forth between the cones, building intensity up until the point where they feel comfortable moving. So how does that apply to what we're doing? Well, similar to building a warm-up program in soccer or football, depending on which glorious part of the world you're from. There are different tasks in AimLab or Kovac or whatever you play that are more suited for speed or technique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run you through a couple of my favorites. What we're about to see here is I just did one. I'm rusty, I'm sloppy, I'm cold, was not prepared to play this, right? And we can see how I go through. Why is this so dark? I don't remember it being this dark. But this is one that's focused on speed, right? This is the aim training equivalent of a sprint. You want to come out here, you want to push yourself to be as fast as possible. Now, I still want to remember my fundamentals, and if you don't know what those are, I talked about those in the first video, so go back and watch that. So I'm not going to recover them here. But all in all, I actually met my average, even though I was cold, because when I am warmed up, I can really push myself to do much better. This is what it looks like when you train this and you're fully warmed up. This is the #1 guy in the past week. The point being that in a warm-up, this isn't what you're trying to do. You want it to be more about easing yourself into it. I love this particular exercise because it really forces speed and it really emphasizes the muscle movements on the broad scale that I'm going to be using, right? It's not as much about fine tuning. It's way more about, okay, well, how am I going to actually utilize all of these muscles and get them all warmed up and ready for the idea of, okay, we're going to be aiming today. Let's get activated and let's do that here. Okay, the second one that I really like is a basic static click exercise. I picked one of the ones that I have on one of my playlists, but any of them will really do, and these are technique focused. They're very precision focused. So again, I'm going in cold, and we're going to be focused on the fundamentals when I'm doing it. No idea why this is so dark. And it's all about understanding, okay, well, I want to use my arm to take my target or my crosshair to my target as fast as possible. I want to use my fingertips to actually fine-tune the aim at the end. And I'm not focused on going quickly or hitting a high score. I'm just focused on doing the right things personally. It's not about the accuracy. It's not about the speed. It's just about Am I utilizing my arm properly? Am I utilizing my forearm properly? My wrist, my fingers, are they all being used the way that they're supposed to be used? And then I get into, about halfway through, I notice that my upper arm is really tense, and I take some time and I relax it, and I get focused on doing the right thing. All right. It's not about the score at the top. And I also, in the midst of this, randomized my target selection because I wanted to utilize very different groups of muscles and wanted to focus on just opening it all up and getting the technique right across the entire arm rather than being so focused on getting a high score, right? But when you look at the person who has the top score of the week, you're going to notice patterns. They're going to move from target to target in a pattern. They're going to transfer themselves more quickly. They're going to go from bottom up because it's easier to aim up than it is to aim down. These are all things that we've talked about. And when you're trying to push the high score, then yeah, you want to do these things. You want to go to the closest target. You want to have an idea where you're going in advance. You want to be really focused, and you're going to get yourself into this position where you're doing things repetitiously without totally recognizing it, right? He really likes to cross over the top, and then the bottom, he goes down on the right side generally, and when he gets to the left side, he goes up. He looks for the medium to short range flicks. He doesn't much care for the long range flicks. There's a lot less accuracy there. He's looking for little clusters. You can pick up on stuff like that when you've watched a lot of people do this, but he's obviously focused on delivering a top score. Meanwhile, me, I'm jumping from a target on the far left to a target on the far right because I realize that I need some wide range of motion to get my upper arm activated and warmed up. One of the last things that I think is important to every warm-up, aside from focusing on both speed and precision, is some kind of generic mouse control exercise. Now, I really like circle track because it's very crosshair placement oriented. It's something that's going to give you really solid results in that regard. It's also a very simple one. I've tested a couple of these admittedly just now, and I worked on the slow one, and that one was the one I liked best for a warm-up because it's high precision and it's very casual. It's just focusing on me and my mouse and how we're able to communicate the intent onto the screen, right? So that was what I preferred, but maybe you have a different actual mouse control exercise that you prefer. Maybe you prefer one of the slow bouncing ones, or maybe you prefer the stars, whichever. What I would recommend is that it's a slow one, if possible with no variation in speed. You want it to be consistent and smooth. You want it to play through nice and easy. You don't want to have to go through and constantly adjust and be totally focused in. You want it to be very relaxing. And if you've got a good one that's very relaxing and is just focused on, okay, let me make sure I'm following this target where it's going, especially if it's one that has a set pattern or a set path, that one would be a great one to start with. That one would be a great one to have first. So those are just 3 exercises. For me, when I'm thinking about a warm-up, I think about, okay, well, how do I want to get into this game? I have found that you can do a full and proper warm-up in a span of about 8 minutes. When you're looking at something like playlists, aim trainers, then you're able to do it in that amount of time. I've done it utilizing a whole bunch of different things for a whole bunch of different games. Another thing that you can notice is you can tell when you're warmed up, right? You can tell because you start hitting certain benchmarks. Like you do that consistently. So what I would recommend for a warm-up is pick 3 to 5 exercises and do them each 2 to 3 times in sequence, right? So I would do my slow, steady tracking one or 2 times. I would do my squares 3 times because it's only 30 seconds and it's about speed. And then I would do precision 2 times in a row. And that would probably be my, like, okay, let's get into something warm up, right? And I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's all about how you target it and how you approach it mentally as well as how you approach it physically. So since we've just been talking about playlists and we've just been talking about how we're going to combine these together in order to make them cohesive and actually get us where we want to go rather than doing them at random, it's about time to talk about training. So let's go to part 2.
Alright guys, it's Chris. We're going to cut the video here just because there's a lot of information in this video and we don't want you guys to just disclude the other information because it's so much to obtain in one video. So if you want to see part 2, make sure to tune in next week. We're going to post part 2 on Saturday. So make sure you're there for that. Other than that, I love you. Thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate you.